On in the show. But right now, we've got a couple of guests we want to bring in. In fact, from New York, we have Lance Rios. Lance Rios is the founder of beinglatino.us, and in Chicago, we have Daliah Saper. She is a principal at the Saper Law offices, and you can find both of them on Twitter. So we'll, of course, be talking about Twitter. And guys, there's a lot of talking points today we can bring into the mix. Yesterday I thought what was interesting, we'll just start this off with a news front. Yesterday what was interesting, when the president came out with his stance on gay marriage, for example, the first place we heard about it was on Twitter. We heard that there was going to be a change, and then we heard what it was going to be, and that was before radio, before television broke in with the news. So, of course, it's still trending today. In fact, right now, as I talk to you, and I'm looking at what's trending, at least in the Los Angeles area on the West Coast, you have, Dark Shadows, the movie's trending, but you also have President Obama, and you have the dinner that's going on tonight here in Los Angeles. You have George Clooney, who's also trending, because that's where the dinner is going to be held, a big fundraising dinner here in Los Angeles. So welcome to both of you. I want to bring you in. We'll start with you, Lance, as we bring up this first talking point. The social network situation, obviously, is really it's funneling news now. In fact, so many of us in news watch and really base some of the things that we get or where the direction we go off of social media.
Yeah. I mean, social media as a whole is really revolutionizing the way that people now receive and give information. And, there's no production involved in actually creating this content to let your networks know what's happening right now. So, the live streaming information is what has become standard because of social media. And that's why I think that when certain things come to fruition, immediately it's going to be in the social media space, whether it's on Twitter, Facebook, or beyond, immediately. So it's really creating a standard where if news happens, it usually happens within the social space first, and then it's being picked up by other traditional outlets afterwards.
Yeah, and Daliah, the one thing, too, is it also really can change the way a story goes. We've seen some stories that just took off like wildfire that may not have been covered in the past or may not have been known about in the past, and it really crosses cultural boundaries, language boundaries. Right now, as I'm looking, you have Feliz Dia de los Madres, which of course is Happy Mother's Day, and then right below it you have Happy Mother's Day trending as well.
It's an amazing tool, and it allows businesses especially to monitor what's being said about them so that they can react immediately. I think we were supposed to talk about at least the Spirit Airlines scandal and the public outcry when Spirit Airlines refused to refund a $200 ticket to a war veteran. And because of that social media outcry, the CEO came out with an apology after a very strong stance otherwise, refunding that money. So I think that it has that power. It does, like you said, it transcends race, gender, country, and it is a very powerful tool.
Yeah, it is. And you mentioned the Spirit Airline. That is one thing we will talk about as well. And what was interesting about the Spirit Airline situation is you had it happening online with Facebook and Twitter, and then you had websites like FoxNews.com, not because we're on FoxNews.com, but they were kind of the first main news website that came out with this story too. And you had a reaction from viewers and people that had an interest in this. So you had Twitter, you had Facebook, you had FoxNews.com, and others then picking up on it all at the same time. So it was kind of a mash of everything at one point, and it did force this company to change its mind, right, Lance?
Yeah. I mean, it was really amazing what happened with people leveraging the social spaces in order to amplify their messaging in a way that is truly effective. To create a change like that, I think, is so substantial. And a lot of major corporations do have to realize that, the social media space, whenever you create any sort of entity of which people can be biased towards or against, immediately by the nature of whatever, business you're engaging in, you really have to be able to understand that, it could be a great thing for you, but can also create certain levels of conflict of which can dictate the way that you run your business. So this is a prime example of that happening.
Yeah, and one thing I want to bring up too now is we've obviously touched on the whole social media aspect of everything and how we all know it's exploded in recent years. The one thing we need to bring into this now is the whole privacy situation, because while it can be effective for changing minds in some ways, positively or negatively, you have the situation like, for example, even with me. I was reading up on the Instagram bylaws last night and what basically you give up by posting on Instagram. And I have posted a lot of pictures on there. I enjoy using the service. And it seems like there's a little bit of a backlash now by some of the users out there, trying to find other ways to stay in touch with each other, other ways to post pictures, share things without giving up your rights, without giving up basically your pictures. Daliah?
Well, every new app has to face these privacy issues. The big four, whatever, Facebook, the Googles, they're all under scrutiny by the FTC. We just heard the story about MySpace being issued reprimand sanctions by the FTC for not disclosing how it's using its friend IDs or user IDs. So it's an issue, and I think it's always on a case-by-case basis. Path, for example, which is a new popular micro private social network, has immediately issued an apology when users found out that everything from their mobile phone, for example, was being uploaded to the application, including all of the friends' addresses. And I think, as we've seen, these social networks push the envelope. They try to gather and harness as much information, and then if there is a public outcry, they take a couple steps back.
Lance, one thing that we were talking about this in the office earlier today was 15 years ago, back when the internet was first, it was all dial-up, and everyone was really starting to get online, at least at the very early stages of it, back in the mid-90s, for example. Your first thing you did was you dialed up and you went to CompuServe, you went to AOL, you went to one of those sites, and that was kind of like your place to go, your neighborhood, so to speak, where you had your email, you had top stories of the day, and then you could farm out from there by hitting links and going other places. Then we went away from that, where people were going online and going to specific websites, of course. And then now in the last 5 years, again, you're seeing the Facebook situation that exploded. Of course, Twitter being something totally different, but you have Facebook, you had MySpace before that, and it seems like we kind of went back to where we began in some respects, right?
Yeah, just like anything else, history definitely repeats itself. I think that Facebook has been very, very strategic with the way that they've been positioning themselves, so they don't turn into necessarily a MySpace where they have a great deal of traction, then they lose a lot. And one of the ways that they've been able to maintain that consistency in being the top social networking site in the world is by creating different elements to it, where essentially you don't have to go anywhere else in order to get other types of information. Meaning, brands. Your favorite brand is going to have a Facebook fan page. So rather than going to their website directly, you know that if you go to their Facebook fan page, the latest and greatest is going to be there. It's a great way of news information. So rather than going to traditional news websites directly, you now have the way or the ability to tap into Facebook fan pages to do so. You can now purchase airplane tickets on Facebook. You can do pretty much everything where you don't have to leave the space in order to get the information that you're seeking. So it's been very, very strategic, kind of the reverse model of that AOL or traditional portal, of which they're bringing that now in and seeing which elements of it actually works.
Right now, speaking of portals and speaking of keeping kind of business within the family, so to speak, we had one viewer, Charles, who has joined the live chat. Pardon me. Again, you can follow us on Twitter. You talk to me at Adam Housley is my Twitter username, and you also can go to our Facebook pages. We have all these things being monitored. We can stay in touch with you. Charles asked a pretty good question too, and it kind of goes along the same lines about Microsoft. And his question was, do you plan on talking about how Microsoft is stifling other rivals? The same argument can be made, some people say, about Apple. I'm an Apple guy, obviously. We use both of them here at Fox. We have Apple and we use PCs. But the argument about Microsoft potentially stifling rivals, Daliah, pardon me, that's kind of obviously a topic. It's not a new topic, so to speak. It's been out there for a while.
Well, look, all businesses have to reinvent themselves and compete in the market, and it sparks innovation and new ways of communicating with users and consumers. So are they stifling competition? I don't know. I think they're encouraging and creating more competition.
Well, Lance, what do you think about that? I mean, again, you have the people that argue that Microsoft and Apple are kind of keeping things within the family and not spreading it out. What's your thought on that?
Well, I think, to me, there's always going to be competition in whatever business that you have. And I think that, by having competition, it obviously is going to keep you relevant. So it allows you the opportunity to have the flexibility to sort of reinvent yourself where it's necessary. Without the competition, you stay stagnant, and that's never good for you as a business provider.
One more quick question for you guys. We have a short time. So first of all, Daliah, to you, then to Lance, what do you guys think is going to come up in the next couple of weeks? What do you see out there? Obviously, a lot of this stuff pops up at the last minute, like Spirit Airlines. Anything on your radar this morning?
I think we're going to be seeing an increase in mobile issues and apps that are primarily accessible only by phone. And I think there's a trend towards new social networks being only a mobile-based phone. I think there was some statistic out there that more people in the world have a phone than they do a toothbrush.
What do you think, Lance?
I think the next big thing that you can expect to see very soon is the reinvention of video within the social media space. You know, with Pinterest and with Instagram, you're seeing a lot of picture-based companies that are coming out now focusing on just pictures, but you know, video is probably one of the most engaging portions of social media, of which a lot of people have sort of slept on. You know, YouTube is the second largest search engine website in the world, and their parent company Google obviously is #1. So that is a testament to the fact that video is a very, very relevant property, and the fact that you haven't seen so many niche sort of social spaces capitalizing on it means that they're coming very soon.
And again, it also comes down to the argument we're having with pictures and what is your rights and how much you give up by posting some of those things. And I'm sure you're going to have the same situation that you have with Instagram, for example, where you're going to have other startups come up where you don't have to give away as many rights and still be able to share your pictures. Last thing, I'm going to ask you one more. Favorite hashtag? Daliah, you first.
Well, you know, we talked about all these important newsworthy hashtags. Apparently the top trending one now is also "You're Not Grown If." That was worth a chuckle or two this morning.
Absolutely. Well, you know, you had the whole planking thing, and then you had owling. I had to tell my brother-in-law that he was doing the whole planking thing about a year ago, and then, of course, the owling hashtag came out, and I was like, what is owling, which is where you kind of perch yourself like an owl. That's all gone away. Thankfully, you don't see those two things right now. But trending here in Los Angeles, you have Dark Shadows, as I mentioned in the movie. You have Time Magazine all of a sudden came up. Cougar Town, which is the TV show, obviously. I wonder if they've been either renewed or canceled. Then you have everything from, like, again, Happy Mother's Day. All right, Lance, your hashtag that sticks out to you right now.
You know what? I really like keeping up with the different variations of the Mother's Day hashtags. I'm like very adamant about following hashtags that surround holidays because I think it's just so funny. Some of the things that people do come up with, and they become standard. So the Mom's Day hashtag is probably one of the best that I think is most entertaining so far.
Yeah, and I love it that you have it in both English and Spanish. Literally right below each other, you have it's Feliz Dia de los Madres, and then right below it is Happy Mother's Day. So you have both being represented right now, and at least in the Los Angeles area.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, Spanish language, you can't forget about those hashtags and the fact that it is so powerful. When I checked it earlier nationally, I think it was actually above the English language. So it's just really funny that, you know, like the things that surround certain holidays just become so strong.
Right, absolutely. Well, Lance Rios from New York, appreciate your time. Lance, of course, the founder of beinglatino.us, and also Daliah Saper out of Chicago. She's a principal at Saper Law. You can follow both of them on Twitter, and we appreciate you guys' time and hope to talk to you guys again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you, Adam.